Hello and welcome to another edition of Inside the Burrow, the FAU podcast for and by fans. My name is Dan. I am joined as usual by Shane and Jack. And this week we are going to spend some time going over the Marshall game. FAU had a tough game last weekend and fell to Marshall. And then we're going to look ahead to UTSA, what we have going on this week. So, I think we'll just kind of start off with a little bit of Marshall talk. Really just a frustrating game. I think that there was some encouraging parts of the game. I think, you pay attention to Twitter during the game. There's a couple key things. Plays go our way, we're a little bit more consistent, and it's an extremely winnable game. Again, we looked like a team that had players out for weeks at a time, and we'll have to – I can't remember, Shane or Jack, you'll have to remind me how many players were out from this game. And I think it's, there's no moral victories, but I think FAU played about as good as they could considering the circumstances. And definitely this week, there was a lot to build on and hopefully establish some consistency working towards UTSA. So I don't know, Shane, what was your do you know the number of players that were out due to COVID or contact tracing?
Yeah, as the Nest reported that just since the start of camp, it's been 43 players. That includes all opt-outs and players that were out going into this week. And then it was like Pete Thamel reported 6 starters, 4 rotational players. Jack, I think there was probably about 20 to 25 just players out for us this game total. You have a contact tracing. Injuries as well, like Marcel Southall was someone who didn't play, but he traveled with the team, so obviously it's not like a COVID situation. But man, when you consider everything, and I remember just saying to people at halftime, we went down in that game at halftime 7-6. I said, man, you could not. I hate moral victories against Marshall, but man, you really couldn't have asked for more than that. And ultimately, that team at the end still had a chance to win. I mean, what it's all said and done, there was the Roman Munden dropped a couple interceptions, kind of had the infield fly one he dropped. We would have kept it a 1-score game. And then we get the terrible penalty call in the back half because Carl Smith thought he was blocking for an intercepted pass. And then, the 50-50 no call on the pass interference, on the 4th down call that on the pass to BJ Alexander. It was tough, and that's against a quote unquote right now top 18 team. You were down no Evan Anderson, who was your starting nose tackle, no Marcel Southall, Alvin Dempsey was out, a couple of the rotational linebackers were out, and we just we played our tails off. It would have been easy for us to go there and lose 35-3 and Knox run for 250 yards.
Yeah, it definitely could have gone that way. Listen, fact of the matter is, if you told us Saturday morning that we would still be in the game with 2 minutes left, we would say, okay, cool. If you told us Saturday afternoon, once we found out how many guys did not even travel, that we would be that close that late in the game, we would say, thank you very much. Take it to the bank. Great moral victory. I'm with you, Shane. I hate using that term, especially when it comes to a team like Marshall. Linebackers stepped up. They did well. Chase Lassiter, dude, love that kid. He played with so much heart and passion all over the field. First quarter, he was in Brandon Knox's face in the backfield. I mean, he plays lights out. Love to see it. Offense, obviously, could have been a bit better, but did as well as they could, even with an offensive line that really wasn't that experienced, that haven't played with each other for that long. So, decent day out. Listen, that Smoke Munden interception in the end zone, awful call. The referees called it an incomplete pass. Bad call, wrong. It was a catch, or at the very least should have been reviewed. But we didn't lose because of the refs. We lost because our offense just wasn't consistent enough. And that was kind of expected against this Marshall defense, who allowed us to drive downfield at times, but we couldn't find a way to really extend the drive. That being said, a lot of positives to take away with a depleted FAU team, and a lot of positives to build upon going towards a UTSA team that could possibly win the Conference USA West, believe it or not. My God, who would have thought that?
Yeah, we'll touch on that in a second. I just want to kind of get on the offensive woes just a little bit here. Again, they pointed out on the broadcast, both our backup offensive tackles, not our starting offensive tackle, get tons of reps during camps and stuff. Our backup tackles really only started practicing, I think, Wednesday or Thursday. Tronte only had 2 days of practice. So that's where a lot of that confusion was coming from. People, and I've had people and I've talked to people, they can't get them set up and they had to use all these timeouts and, before third downs, and the team looked confused. They tried to implement a game plan in 48 hours. You know what I mean? I noticed there was Willie Wright was playing outside receiver. Logan Peterson kind of plays that H-back role. He was playing the regular tight end role, right? He was doing a little different thing. I rewatched the game, and I noticed one time after one of those times out, Coach Taggart was talking to Logan Peterson. He might have been position wrong, but that's just all little easy things to clean up and hopefully get the offense going. We saw some flashes of it, when it can get going, and hopefully, get Malcolm Davidson going in a game. We saw it on that drive, on the touchdown drive, and then the next drive before Tronte threw kind of, the bad interception. So I think those are things, that can easily be cleaned up. And again, we won't see a defense like Marshall's the rest of the year. I mean, App State averages nearly 300 yards on the ground a game, and Marshall held them to 84 yards and 7 points in their game. So, we outscored App State technically. Yeah.
And remember,
we did.
Shane, I want to throw in there that Malcolm Davidson was also not at practice until late last week as well. Maybe that could explain him getting caught by the turf monster a few times.
Yeah. It's just I'm noticing more and more. We saw this last year, and I was trying to remember this year. Malcolm Davidson didn't really start the season last year. He was like 4th on the depth chart going into Ohio State. Got a couple carries versus UCF, and then actually got hurt that game against UCF on a long run he had, and then missed the next couple weeks. And he didn't really get going until the second half of the season. So it seems maybe that's just the type of back he is.
Well, especially with such inconsistency. I mean,
and also just we can't talk about. And I remember I said this when he was committed, that he's more talented version of Diary Edgecombe and Larry McCammon. Larry McCammon does everything so well. He pass blocks really well. His Pro Football Focus grade numbers say that. That's part of some reasons he might be in there in certain situations over maybe a guy like Malcolm Davidson. He catches the ball really well. We saw that tough 3rd and 4 he caught. So if I was going to draw some positives out of the offense, they went 8 of 18 on 3rd and 4th down in the game. When you can kind of consider everything, that's pretty solid for 3rd and 4th down conversion. So they were able to, and Jim Levitt pointed out in his presser that that 8-minute drive we had in the 3rd quarter was so helpful, to keeping the defense rested, because they couldn't go fast. They had to almost play kind of time possession football.
Yeah.
And it worked. Brendan Knox was mostly isolated, save for that release valve pass when everyone was out of position to defend that in the first quarter.
Yeah. Again, I mean, there's a lot to like, and again, no one likes a moral victory. And obviously, losses happen. There's nothing that we can do about it. And considering the situation, I think there's a lot to build on, and now we have the opportunity. To move forward. Against
FAU plays with a regular team on a neutral site versus Marshall. I think we win that game most times.
I mean, even
Marshall doesn't scare me in any way.
Yeah, even not a neutral site.
They don't.
Yeah, with the same amount of games, the same amount of prep that Marshall has had. Yeah, I think that's a much different game. So, yeah, I think we'll kind of transition on into UTSA, and then some. Speaking of the running back situation, Larry McCammon is out for this game. BJ Emmons once again is questionable, although he seems to always be questionable. So I wouldn't count on that. And so we'll have our stable of running backs is down to our tandem of running backs with James Charles and Malcolm Davidson.
One caveat to that. I would expect Kelvin Dean to see more carries. He had a carry against Marshall. I'd expect if BJ Emmons can't go, I would expect Kelvin Dean.
Yeah, Dean's carry against Marshall is pretty good. Emmons has been running on the ankle now, which is good, but still not sure if he will be 100% going into the game. And why kind of force that situation when you have a few other capable backs that can get the job done. No need to cause a re-injury, if you will.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess at UTSA and FAU, there's not a long history between us. I think, especially since we played them last year and handled them pretty well. That was the game that BJ Emmons came back and dominated. But FAU leads the series 2-0. We had that really, really exciting game. I think maybe the last year of Charlie Partridge's tenure here. If you remember those, that was a really fun game. And I think surprisingly, I was looking at how many games UTSA has played. They are 4-3. Like you mentioned, Jack, they have a chance to win CUSA West. I think currently they are second, and they played some decent football. They played 7 games. FAU has played 2. They've got a pretty solid running back, and again, this is building on consistency. This is an opportunity for us, especially at home, to build on what hopefully will be a better season moving forward. Jack, I mean, I know you've I guess what are your thoughts on this year's UTSA team?
I mean, I wouldn't say they have a solid running back. Sincere McCormick is the leading rusher in the entire nation right now. I mean, yeah, you can say it's because they played 7 games, but the dude has 867 yards. He's averaging 5.6 yards a pop, 7 touchdowns. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. One thing that sticks out to UTSA is that they probably gave BYU the biggest scare they've had all year. But that game needs to have an asterisk next to it because their quarterback, Lel Narcisse, we saw a little bit of him last year. That was his first start against BYU, and then the very next week against Army, he got hurt. His season is done. So Frank Harris is going to take over again. Defensive coordinator Jim Leavitt had some nice things to say about Harris, a lefty. He's also their second leading rusher on the team. He can be a bit mobile, but I don't see him as much of a passing threat. And the stats kind of back that up a little bit. So I think this could be a good day for the defense to show out. I think going from Brandon Knox to McCormick, I mean, if we're able to contain Knox, I feel pretty confident being able to contain McCormick. But I will say McCormick is much more agile. He can beat you going east-west as well as north-south, much more explosive as well. He's got some speed to him. So it's definitely a tough task, but you have to say the defense is going to fare a bit better, especially defense is going to have a lot of its guys back and ready to finally play some ball.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. Hopefully we can get, guys like Evan Anderson and, Darius Moultrie back and, those type of guys, Dempsey and stuff along the front, kind of get that rotation. And yeah, like you said, Jack, Frank Harris is not the passer that, Noel Narcisse is. So it'll be kind of, just on the running back. I will say this, and I don't know, and this is a question I would ask for UTSA. Sincere McCormick had 37 carries to beat Louisiana Tech. I know he's young, but man, it kind of that's like a stat that reminds me of Dave Wannstedt running Ricky Williams into retirement. type carries. I just don't know. Maybe is that tough going week to week? I asked somebody about it this week who covers Conference USA, and he's like, yeah, that could affect them later in the season. Who knows now, that them being 7 games in. I will say this, though, about their passing game, and this is the one thing that worries me. I've been okay with our secondary play this year. It's had its moments. They should have 4 picks. I love Roman Munden. I even think on the couple plays he got beat, he was in position. It was just a nice throw and a nice catch by Wells and Gamage this weekend. They will throw at him because he's smaller. It's kind of a Chris Tooley situation. Chris Tooley was always in position. He was a good cornerback, but teams just threw at him because they're like, well, we'd rather throw at him than James Pierre, because Roman Munden's in that kind of 5'8", 5'7" range, right? Instead of throwing at the opposite side where now you have a Zion Gilbert, who's more of your traditional 6'1" corner. UTSA's receivers are bigger, okay? Joshua Sepsis is 6'3". Zykira Franklin is, 6'1". So that worries me a little bit if they decide, what I've noticed about Jim Leavitt is he puts pressure on his corners. He leaves them on islands sometimes to bring heat. We blitz. The defense is so good. We blitz. We've probably blitzed more in these 2 games than I think we did all under Glenn Spencer. It's just a different style of defense, maybe there's a stat that doesn't back that up, but that's what it just feels like on the screen when I'm watching it, with us always trying to bring an extra man. So that worries me a little bit if, we kind of make it an easy man coverage and they just kind of play pitch and catch and throw it up and try and beat the smaller cornerback. But yeah, hopefully they only have so many of those.
I think it's a great take because Coach Leavitt even mentioned how tall the receivers are. So if that was in the forefront of his mind during his presser on Tuesday, then you got to think he's trying to pay extra attention to that. He did call some blitzes from the outside, like nickel guys came into the blitz every once in a while, and I couldn't even tell you the last time we've seen an FAU defense do that. Does he do that same thing this time around with these tall receivers? I don't know. I don't think so. So we still got to hope, though, with the added depth of the defensive line, that these guys can continue the rotation to stay good and be able to put pressure on Harris. If we're able to put pressure on Harris, I think that helps us out a lot.
And what a defensive coordinator will do, and just so fans don't get frustrated, they're going to play the numbers game with that. They're going to be like, if we put pressure and try and make them sustain drives, you know what? They might hit to a couple 30-yard passes where they just throw it up and he makes a nice throw and the guy catches it deep. Right, but that doesn't sustain offense. So yeah, maybe Munden gets beat on a couple of deep fades or deep goes, but we'll take our chances of them having to continue drives, and we'll play the odds there of the quarterback having to make nice throws, and put it in the right spot for those guys to catch it. So I think that's kind of the philosophy there. So I'd expect that. Yeah, so, and also just a little different element, probably a warm, muggy Saturday. Guys, when's the last time FAU played a true noon game, regular season, not Conference USA Championship?
It's got to be 3 years, right? I don't think we did it all in Lane's
The last one I remember is the Buffalo game.
Yeah.
Triggered. I'm so triggered.
Yeah.
I can't believe you just said that.
Yeah.
So
one of the worst things in my life.
Well, I mean, UTSA is it'll be pretty warm. They might be a little more used to it than other teams.
We're getting a cold front up here. It's going to be warm down there. No, it's a shame.
Yeah, it'll be pushing through. Of course, the beautiful, nice, sunny day always will come after FE plays. It's the day after we'll get like that hint of fall weather.
Maybe it can be used to our advantage. The Roadrunners do play out of the Alamo Dome. They're not used to playing with conditions. I mean, if the conditions are just hot and humid, well, I mean, UTSA is probably used to that because that's where they practice anyways, is outdoors. But, any way we can get a leg up because, listen, the line is only -5. I think that's a good line. Because we still have question marks regarding our offense. So any advantage we can get, I'll take it.
Wear white at home? Just a thought.
I mean, if that would help, let's do it.
Just the thought. The
Are they
Dolphins
doing that yet?
and the Bucks to a degree
It
have been
looks
doing that
good.
for years. So
Those all white uniforms look good. I'm just saying.
Any advantage. I do think the offense will kind of have a quote unquote breakthrough this week. It's not going to be 69 points against North Texas a couple years ago, but I just think, common sense would say the practice time alone, would call for improvement.
Well, I think the practice time and also like coaches getting a real there's no way to there's no real way to simulate the actual game and seeing, what Tronti's, strengths and real limitations are. Certainly it's pretty darn clear that anything past 15 yards is going to be a challenge. But I think having that tape to go back to is just going to give, more data, more information to the coaches to be able to make a decision, on what plays to call. And really just, I expect us to be sharper. I think in the first two games, we looked like a team that was dealing with COVID restrictions, right? Looking like a team that hadn't played very much. So I certainly think that, added practice, added game tape, things like that will enable us to have a much more polished game than I think than what we've dealt with in the past. So, you guys have any final thoughts on this past couple of weeks or this coming week?
I do want to say UTSA did look really good last week against Louisiana Tech. You could even say they put themselves in position to win the West with that win. And at one point late in the fourth quarter, Louisiana Tech had like one of those 98% chances of winning, and the Roadrunners found a way to come. So they have a new head coach, Coach Traylor. It seems like, maybe a program in San Antonio is finally coming alive. We all know that they have great potential. It's just a matter of time. And it looks like they're finally taking the steps in the right direction. So we can't sleep on it.
And I'm mind blanking on the last coach's name who they fired in the offseason. There's a similar, transition
the guy from LSU. Harris?
Yes. He could recruit. Recruiting at UTSA was never his issue. Sounds a lot like Charlie Partridge. It was a very much of a situation like Charlie Partridge, where it's like, why are we losing all this game and we've recruited really well? Very similar situation. It was just they needed a coach to kind of put it all together, and that's what they're kind of getting with now. Them only losing by 7 points to BYU is insane. BYU's rolled through everybody they've played this year. So
BYU is one of the best teams in the country that no one's talking about. They're insane. Oh, there's that.
Yeah. All right. Well, we appreciate you guys joining us for this week, and make sure check out the UTSA game this week. Like Shane mentioned, true 12 p.m. start if you can't get out there. Check it out on the television. And again, we appreciate you. Make sure you check us out all over the place: iTunes, Spotify, FAUAllisNest.com, YouTube, Twitter, everything like that. So we will catch you guys next week while we hopefully will be recapping a win against UTSA. So once again, for Shane and Jack, go Owls.